Welcome back to the Abridged Pontus campaign. Last time we took down the Adrissans when they tried to attack us. We also took down Atropatkan when they tried to resurge near our border, and we took some territory from them as well, so that was nice. We eventually defeated the Adrissan kingdom completely after a few stumbles towards the end, and with our forces now freed up, we went back to war with Thyni, and we're now attacking Pella with an army both inside and outside that we need to deal with. I've deployed our first army to the west of the city, knowing that the enemy's reinforcements are coming from the west, and you can see we are facing west because we'll be ignoring the city entirely as the battle starts. Our plan, just be between where the enemy's reinforcements are coming in and the city, because they'll try and run towards the city and we shall intercept them. While that's going on, the enemy does also have a fleet. It's going to be able to land and reinforce the city garrison, but the presence of this fleet will actually work to our advantage as the battle starts, because it's taking the enemy's unit limit up to near 40, the maximum number of units allowed on the field. That means their reinforcement army can only come on a few units at a time, and that's going to make it significantly easier to kill. First, all of their heavy infantry, their hoplites, are coming out on their own. They'll have to fight Mithridates' whole army, and we can easily surround them. First, we allow the enemy to come towards our pike phalanxes, where we'll have pike phalanx versus hoplite phalanx. We've got the reach, so surely this is going to go in our favour. It looks like the enemy can attack back on occasion. Don't know if that counts as a hit. It probably does. So we'll just lock those units in place and then start moving around to outflank them and the like. Here, one unit that was moving into position got absolutely smashed by a hail of javelins, doing so much damage to the back and right side of the unit, the most weak point for a ranged attack. Those jabs coming from my Galatian troops who are just walking around ready to rear attack anything they can. These units are pretty high in terms of morale, so it's going to take a while to kill them. They can take quite a lot of punishment, including this. We do a nice lancer charge into the back of one of the units. I thought that might completely decimate them and rout them, but no, it just does moderate casualties, and then they'll continue to fight, and our cav will have to leave since we don't want to be stuck fighting hoplites. They do have a bonus against cavalry. It does also push them closer to our pike phalanx, but it looks like our phalanx hasn't broken. Our guys aren't using their swords, so that's probably good news. Now here we are, some time later, things are starting to go our way, starting to grind a few units down and surround them and actually get a few kills here and there in the weird phalanx fighting. And the main point is that as we kill units one by one, other units will now spawn in to replace them from the point where the enemy's reinforcement army is coming from. So I've got that point very much on watch, with an entire extra army from Mithridates III now standing by to attack anything that comes out of that point. Now that I've pinpointed where it is, I'm moving more troops into position. And these first couple of units, these peltasts, they're just going to be subject to cavalry attack, nice and easy. We'll try and kill them before they do any damage. Make sure they can't use their ranged attacks if we can, even throwing in my Jav Cav to make those attacks, just to ensure that happens. Then I can push in more infantry to get a nice perimeter around the point where the enemy are going to be spawning. There you can see what happens when an enemy routs near the line. They just kind of despawn, they disappear into a ghostly form, and another unit will then phase into existence. Here some Jav Cav phased into the middle of one of my Jav Cav units, and now I'm going to get out of there since that's not a especially favourable melee, and replace them with some regular melee infantry. Now we can fight the enemy before they can make too much use of their jabs. So that's a nice advantage to getting the enemy stuck on the line, essentially. They can't skirmish away and do too many annoying tactics. So with that in place, we'll keep hacking away there. We'll keep hacking away over here, where the hoplites are taking a while to get rid of because they're all very tough, but eventually, one by one, we can overwhelm and bring those heavy infantry units down, and more stuff will be spawning here near the line. I've got my archers into position to start outflanking the enemy with some nice shots onto their lighter infantry. That should help thin them out, and I've pushed in plenty of my own medium to heavy infantry under Mithridates III to fight this. I'm going to save all of the pike phalanx troops and the superior troops under Mithridates I for later in the fight. You can see I'm trying to spread my men out over a fairly wide area because the enemy are spawning in various different places. But you can see it didn't necessarily succeed in doing that. Here we've got one unit that just spawns in and immediately starts making a javelin attack onto the flank of these swordsmen. That's going to do a decent amount of damage, and then once they're done throwing jabs, they can turn that ranged attack into a melee charge and get more flank morale penalties going. So that's going to be a bit of a nasty engagement there for our troops. Luckily, it's the inferior area of recruitment troops who are very populous in this region, so we can get them back quite easily if we need to. Here was an opposite kind of problem where I'd actually covered the line so much that the enemy couldn't spawn there at all, so they spawned behind my troops, and in this case Cav were doing a lot of damage to my cavalry waiting at the back there before I even realised. So very sneaky, but soon enough we're going to lock everything into melees. Lots of ranged units here who are going to get some nice unfavourable fights. With all the heavy infantry already defeated earlier in the fight, we are going to have the overall advantage. We just need to press it and try to minimise our casualties. Here there was a nice chance for our archers to do some damage. Some exposed backs to the enemy units were targeted by me but not necessarily fired at. You can see for some reason my men are just running away. I think there's some buggy behaviour with skirmishing when you're near the line, or maybe when you're targeting something that's near the line. Not quite sure. Eventually they decide they are going to actually shoot, and now we're going to rain arrows onto the lightly armoured enemies. That's going to do tons of damage and allow us to start clearing everything up. Here we are a couple of minutes later then, with everything either killed or routed. The enemy's main force is gone. That's going to leave us free to bring both of our armies to now go and attack their city. The balance bar still in the enemy's favour. They've got quite a lot of stuff inside, so the work isn't over yet. Mithridates has already prepared his force to make the beginnings of the attack. I've just been resting these troops rather than getting them tired fighting on the line there, so they'll be ready to go. And we'll start off with a ballista assault. We need to start opening up some gaps in the walls for our assault troops to move through, so we'll just have to wait and do exactly that, see how many breaches we can get going. There are also the archery towers that we need to worry about, and taking the advice of a comment on a previous part of the series, I think I'm going to use fire arrows to try and bring them down rather than the ballista. For whatever reason my archers are just shooting at the ground in front of the tower, so not terribly effective. I think there was some sort of glitch where they thought they were in range but they weren't, so after shuffling them around a bit we get something that's a bit more like it. We can rain fire arrows on these towers, and it's actually pretty quick to set them alight, then you just run away and they eventually burn down, so it's even more effective than I thought. And the ballista has made a couple of openings, I think 3 altogether there, so it's one big opening for us to use to get into the town, and has routed a couple of units in the process as well. Once the towers were all dealt with, we could use our archers for something else. Might as well use up the rest of their ammo. I'm going to have them just shoot at the enemy's archers. Their archers are quite a lot worse than mine. They're mostly garrison archers, I think, so they're just trash as archers come. So we just shoot them up, and we only take a few casualties to destroy several units of these archers. It was very effective. Their low morale helped since they just ran away at half strength. So that'll just make it a bit easier for our troops to get in unmolested and start setting up a position inside the enemy's walls. I'm waiting right now for Mithridates III to get his army into position to make an attack from the east at the same time as Mithridates I comes in from the west. He also needed to take down some towers with archers, a little bit more dodgy this time because enemy archers were shooting us at quite close range as we did it, but I think it's worth the casualties. I'm willing to gamble that the losses to those archers will have little impact overall, but destroying those towers will make our infantry assault much easier. So you can see I've left a load of ladders over here from earlier in the deployment phase, so Mithridates III's troops can grab these ladders and start pushing them to the walls. For whatever reason, all of the troops that we routed from the western part of the town were actually hanging around just outside the eastern wall. I thought this may present an issue. Maybe it would prevent us from actually setting the ladders up here because all these guys would get stuck fighting a melee as they came in to try and push them right into position. But it seems we can just plow through them, and while some of our guys do end up fighting these enemy routers, the ladders still go up and other guys will start climbing, so we can make the attack there. Meanwhile, the attack in the western part of the town is getting started. I'm attacking here with Galatian mercenaries, trying to hit some of the Thracian warriors, and the main problem we'll have here is that the enemy have lots of skirmish troops, small units from their navy, who are able to throw javelins into these static melees, and with all the choke points we can't maneuver to get rid of those skirmishers, meaning our heavy troops will actually take very large casualties since they are so weak to javelin attacks and they just can't avoid them. We can only hope that it will be over soon and we'll be able to go after those skirmishes once the path has been cleared. Our pike phalanxes are making their way into the town to see what they can do, and our attack over the top of the ladders is going to be pretty successful here, since the enemy are mostly defending with inferior units. We'll just hack our way through. Even though some of our units here aren't the best, it's still going to be good enough to capture this part of the wall and give us another angle to work with as we make our way deeper into the town. Now my pikes moved along the road towards these enemy jav cav. I thought they might run away, but they didn't. They just stood there throwing jabs at point blank range, and that's pretty effective. Going to get tons of kills against my pike phalanx, so that's good for them. But I did manage to actually advance the phalanx into those jav cav. For whatever reason, this didn't do all that much. I thought we might just start hacking our way through and destroy the front line of the jav cav at least, but apparently not. Then some enemy infantry started filtering through to engage the pike phalanx properly. So we're going to get a nice blob engagement going here. At least our pikes are fighting mostly from the front by the looks of things. We'll just have to try and beat the enemy by sheer attrition, hack our way through. I'm throwing some more Galatians in to support our phalanx and make it harder to outflank there by just enveloping it from behind. And that's just going to be a blobby grind that we'll leave going. Here our battle near the ladders is just about won. We've defeated most of the enemy units and others are routing away, so we'll have these units to play with very soon. And the battle where the Javs were attacking our Galatians was also eventually won, although with very large casualties. Some of our units were almost lost due to the fighting here being so dangerous for our men. Many of those Jav units are still at large, but now we're going to be free to just chase them down and deal with them properly. And here you can see I've put more pike phalanxes ready to take part in this blobby fight. It's still going okay. Our phalanxes are kind of holding. It's really messy, but I think for the most part we're still getting the pike phalanx bonus going. Now our group from the ladders can run unopposed towards the centre of the town and make a nice rear attack against this group of archers who didn't even turn around. They seemed quite unawares that we were coming up like this. So we'll get them and we can contest the capture point they're just on the edge of, although the enemy are going to send some units from their reserve in the centre to stop us there, so we couldn't advance any further than that. I decided to try and use my archers to do something useful by just running them through the town like this to draw the enemy's attention. There's not much hope of them actually achieving anything, but it does pull enemies away from the victory point, so that may make it easy to assault later. I'm also trying to go for enemy towers just to capture them, since the losses they'll inflict on our archers aren't all that important, and if we can get the tower that will help out quite a lot. These archers get caught in melee, so that's going to be pretty bad. I'm going to try and disengage whenever I notice this going on and just draw the enemy around, while setting up for this new attack on the victory point from the south, with everyone who broke through in the west, pushing my reserves into this particular assault as well, since we took such heavy losses getting here. The enemy do charge out to stop us, so we're going to have yet another grind starting up here, but the victory point is now unoccupied as a result, so if any of our groups can break through, we will have a nice run not only onto the rear flanks of the other groups, but to the victory point itself. So now it's really a race against time, because there's not that much time left in the battle before the enemy automatically wins. We need to achieve something quite quickly. I moved Mithridates up to try and support our southern attack. While he can't do very much in the way of actual fighting, since everything's just blocked, he can come in and start using the general abilities, especially things like Second Wind, because that's going to massively buff our troops. I can't remember exactly, but when your troops are exhausted, they get a hidden debuff, which is something like minus 50% armor, which makes them very quick to die. So using Second Wind makes your troops survive much longer in melee. You can also see here I've got a couple of skirmish units who, after a bit of dancing around in the eastern part of the town, have managed to take that victory point, and the enemy aren't reacting. All they need to do is send one unit back to clear us out and they'll probably be fine, but we are actually getting that capture right now. I also did successfully capture one of the enemy's towers, and that's proving quite useful because it can actually just about fire onto the edge of the southern group of enemies and will do plenty of damage while that fight goes on. We did win our attack with the pike phalanxes after a while, so that is all good. Now we can push on further and rear attack the nearby enemies and go for the victory point, as I said. So here most of our army is able to come through and attack the enemy's final group in the south, and now victory is looking very likely after a slightly hairy grind through the town. We've got that victory point locked down. just a couple of minutes before we needed to in order to avoid losing due to the time running out, and it looks like we're actually going to be able to defeat the enemy here anyway. Since we can rear attack them, we get a couple of units to rout. The enemy general isn't looking too happy about all of this. They're still fighting on despite the balance bar being really far in our favour, but eventually we do convince them to shatter, and that's going to bring the fight to an end, I think just before I won anyway due to the victory points counting down. Finally, it's over then. A close victory, lots of casualties to get this win, and we nearly lost both armies, since if the timer had run out, I think we would have been auto-resolved to death by default by the enemy, but we got away with it just about, and that's going to spell doom for the Thyni. We lost a couple of full units unfortunately, so we'll have to re-recruit them, and really we're going to have to wait around and do recruiting anyway, since the rest of our armies are trashed. We'll need a lot of time to replenish and the like, so no more military action for a couple of turns at least. We'll move right into Pella, and that's going to eliminate Thyni as a faction, as I said, so they are gone. We've also now handily captured another region in a new province, so that's progressing towards our objective, but because there are no Pontic people here technically, we'll have to go elsewhere to replenish, or have to start touring around with these armies to get them back to strength and hope that Pella's fine on its own. The question now is, what do I do next? And one option I had on the cards was to go after Rome, so now I'm spying on them. We've got quite a long border with them, and they've got an army nearby, lots of Triarii, not especially historically accurate this force they're fielding here, but it's more powerful than the historical force, I would say, so worth knowing that it's there if we are going to start something with them. So as I said, I'll do a bit of touring around and get our armies back together. Here now, a couple of turns later, Mithridates is pretty much good to go, starting to move back up to our western border, ready to think a bit more seriously about going for a raid on Rome. But here we learn that the Romans have just had the Marian reforms, that's the one that makes them all overpowered and stuff, giving them their legionaries, so this could be a bad time to declare war on Rome, although then again it could be a good time because we may want to try and stop them before they become too powerful. The question was taken out of my hands when Rome, just completely unprovoked, declared war on me in that very turn. So there we go, perhaps they seek to use their new Marian reforms to bring us down before we become powerful enough to stop them. So it looks like we're going to have to do this. They're already at war with tons of people, so clearly they're being very aggressive right now, and fortunately our allies are going to join us in this war, although I think they might have actually been at war with Rome already, because Rome's just been declaring war on everyone, as we saw. The army we were scouting moves south. We'll have to try and keep an eye on them, since they're the nearest Roman forces we know of. One positive side effect being at war with Rome is that everyone likes us now, because everyone hates Rome. So now we can get alliances and non-aggression pacts all over the place, especially with the nearby Greek states who should help us out in this conflict. So I'm going to use my spy to look for that Roman force, but instead I find a Spartan army. It looks like the Romans have been defeated trying to fight with the Spartans down along the coast, and that's perfect timing. That means the army that was guarding their nearest settlement to us hopefully is gone, and there isn't another one just up to the north or something. We're not even going to look, we're going to play this dangerously, we'll go right for the attack now. There's one general inside, but a sizable garrison, giving them something of a presence on the balance bar. It's not an easy auto-resolve situation because the losses would be so great that a counter-attack would then put us in danger, so I am going to just leave that under siege and perhaps bring Mithridates III up to help. I actually downsized his army because there weren't enough supplies near Pella to keep a full stack hanging around, so he can start following behind us now and recruit a few area of recruitment things on the way, perhaps to bolster his forces. I'm also moving Ariobarzanes over to join the Roman war. This is pretty risky because it leaves our territory completely undefended. We're going to put all of our military forces out through our western border and leave the empire open to attack. We're really hoping that no one's going to betray us right now to try and give ourselves the best chance possible against Rome. It's Rome or bust. That's basically our strategy. Now in the Roman turn they send a veteran to check out Mithridates, and he dies in the process, so that's pretty handy. And then their garrison force sallies out to attack us. It's not a very good battle for them, so no idea why they did it, but again we can't auto-resolve it. We'll have to fight to make sure our force is looking good afterwards, so this will hopefully be our first taste of Roman blood at the start of the next part.